Hi there, it's Jen from ModernMedicineLady.com and the Empathic Woman System, and due to a few technical difficulties, I'm a little bit late jumping on. But tonight I have something really exciting to share with you that I have been wanting to do for a while, and that is to bring my dear, dear friend Kari Mitchell of Kari Mitchell Healing on to talk about her journey healing from Lyme disease. And Kari's story is really amazing. And I have been truly inspired by her, as well as really have benefited myself from doing work with her as a Lyme survivor myself. So I am going to attempt to get Kari on here so that we can share screens and I can interview her so you can see her beautiful face and hear her lovely voice. If for some reason this is not working, then I'm going to have to do a little bit of a switcheroo and I'm going to need to shift over to my over to my computer so that I can call Kari on the phone and have her be on, that's much better. I was like looking like a bald Santa Claus right there for a second. Anyway, I'm going to see if I can find Kari. And, okay, Kari is not here yet. Okay. So I'm just going to let her know. Kari is watching. Woohoo! Okay, Kari, let's go grab you and bring you on camera. Hopefully this is going to work this time. Fighting Kari. Fingers are crossed.
Can you see me?
Yes!
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God. Okay.
Okay. Wow.
So, yay.
Yay.
What a gift.
Yeah.
Kari and I spent a little bit of time trying to get her on earlier and it was getting pretty wacky. So, Kari Mitchell of Kari Mitchell Healing, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Awesome. Thank you, Jen. First of all, thank you for doing this. I so appreciate it. I admire you so much. I love your work and I'm super happy to be here and to talk about what we're doing in this whole journey. I am an energy healer. Liz O'Grady and Susan. Yay! Love you too.
Yay!
I'm an energy healer and I came to it through the illness of Lyme disease. I had no idea what energy healing was or even that it existed as little as, 7 years ago. And so having been through that journey, my world got rocked. I started looking at other options and now this is basically what I do for a living. And I mean, it's amazing. Things happen, lives change, people's health and their whole being changes in ways that I never ever imagined would be possible. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I just want to say that I have been like perishing to get you on to tell your story for a while because I know that you've been through hell with Lyme disease. And I also know that you're not in hell anymore.
Right.
And I have really wanted to hear your story at a greater length. So tell me and tell our viewers about, for example, how did you even know you had Lyme disease? What was it like when it started for you?
Right. Okay. So yeah, we have to go way back in time.
Let's go in the Wayback Machine and talk about this.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing with chronic illnesses. It's years and decades before you get any kind of diagnosis or any kind of idea what's going on. You get bounced from one thing to another forever. So I'd been in the Peace Corps. I went to Russia, came back from the Peace Corps, and I never really felt right. This was about 2002 when I got home. And, I'd grown up in Montana, so I was trying to hike the same trails afterward that I had hiked the week before, I left for Russia. And I couldn't hike. I didn't have the stamina. I didn't feel great. But I told myself I was getting old. I was 30 at the time.
That's really old.
I know, right? Yeah. And then I'd been living at sea level for 2 years and, I was hiking at 5,000 and 7,000 feet. So I had all these excuses and explanations for why I wasn't feeling great. And then I started to have random pains show up. So like an ankle that like always hurt and wouldn't heal, and was really picky about like what kind of shoes I wore. So all these random pains started to show up, and then migraines started. And, you know, again, I had these explanations. I'd started a new job. I owned a newspaper. I had all these explanations for why I was feeling this way. But the 4 years of migraines, like every day, was a point where things actually really sucked. Like this was like not okay. It wasn't tenable. But even that wasn't enough to like totally knock me out. I would work through like that blind migraine haze, like owning the newspaper and putting it out and all of that. And so this had gone on from '02 to '08, just sort of little sort of nagging, increasingly crappy type symptoms. And then one weekend in 2008, I went to a writing conference and like made this big commitment that I was going to write the novel that I'd been wanting to write for years, got really excited about it, really impassioned around it, got home from that writing conference, and boom, like I went down for the count. Like I still don't have a very good explanation for why that was, but I went down so hard after that writing conference, I didn't get up for 4 years. Like that's the beginning of my zombie years. From that moment, whatever happened that weekend, and like I said, God knows what that was all about. It was not a hard weekend. It was not a big deal. I went down, turned into a zombie. I would sleep 14 hours, never fully be asleep. When I was awake, I was just like, my mind shut off. It was so bad that I would just basically stare out a window for days at a time. Like I had no ability to even tell you what day it was. Like for weeks and months, my brain had completely shut down. It was unbelievably painful. And then, you know, all of the stuff that Lyme disease starts to do to you, you get overly toxified and you can't detox out of your, you know, crap out of your body and all of that. So basically that was '08 to 2012. And in that time I was going from more and more alternative type healing things. You know, I'd started in Western medicine and, you know, done the rounds of antibiotics and all of that. But it wasn't until sometime in like 2010 that I finally had a functional med doc who said, Kari, this has all the earmarks of Lyme disease. Like it's not really going to show up on a test right now, but if I had to tell you what this was, I would say this is Lyme disease. And I was like, well, if you don't have an explanation or a solution for this, I'm not sure I care, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was 2010 before I even had an idea of what we were looking at.
What's funny is I was almost the opposite when I actually got my first diagnosis for Borrelia, which is Lyme disease. I was in my naturopath's office and I was so happy to have an answer.
Right.
I was so grateful just to know, oh my God, there's finally an explanation for why I have been going through all of the stuff I've been going through for so long.
Right.
So, you know, but what I'm hearing you say is, you know, it's like if there isn't a solution, who cares what the diagnosis is?
Yeah, I had really gotten to that point.
Yeah.
I was so frustrated by then, as so many people are in that point, that I was like, unless you've got something useful, the language no longer helps me. And I'd done enough research on Lyme disease that was not a diagnosis I wanted attached to me. Oh my God, no. Lyme can be horrible. I mean,
well, and there's so much fear in our culture about Lyme disease.
Right.
Like there's fear mongering about this disease. And like a lot of people who are just like, you know, you hear the word and they're terrified of it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, for legitimate reason, a lot of it. And yet it, you know, it's healable. Like I don't have any symptoms now. It's, and when I was going through all of this, I was not hearing any conversation about Lyme. I was in Montana rather than back east.
Yeah.
And I mean, I hadn't heard of anybody who'd recovered from it. So I was like, keep that diagnosis away from me. But yeah.
Absolutely. And I just want to point out, I mean, you're not talking about somebody who had an acute infection and started to do some healing work. We're talking about you basically, what, 2004, you went down for the count?
8.
And 2008, you went down for the count. But when was the exact time that it started, though? Was 2004 you started feeling crappy?
2002 is when I started feeling crappy.
So 2002 started feeling crappy, and then basically 4 years of just sort of feeling
Getting
lousy,
worse,
but not knowing what was going on. And then 2008, you were at the conference and you went down for the count, and all of a sudden you went through the next 4 zombie years where it was like you could have been on the Walking Dead set.
Totally.
And and in that time, 8 years of dealing with this illness, nobody knows what's going on.
No.
And people putting you on random antibiotics, it's not doing you any good.
Right.
I can't even imagine. And yet, 8 years of this illness, and here you are, and you're fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And it took...
Which, I mean, that brings tears to my eyes.
Right? Me too, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it took 2 years after that, like that point of getting the diagnosis. It took 2 years after that before I found anything that did any good. So even from there, we did, oh God, I mean, this is one of the things that people with chronic illness and Lyme disease do. We go through this game of, did you try X? Did you try Y? So we tried everything.
and the people saying, I've tried everything, and you kind of know it's true. They have tried everything.
Yeah. Like the blood infusions, the ozone. I mean, so those 2 years were kind of the ramped up, let's try some really crazy shit and see if it works. Yeah. I mean, and my husband at the time, now ex, was sick also with a similar set of kind of symptoms. And so between him and me, we spent, probably $20,000 a year trying all these things.
I was just going to ask you, you read my mind. I was literally just going to ask you, do you have any sense of how much money you poured down the drain into Lyme disease?
God. There was one point where I was looking back at our records, and it had totaled $50,000 between the two of us over the course of not even the full 10 years. So that doesn't even total everything we did. And
I'm sure
it was a lot of yo-yo. Like, something would work for a little while and there would be a little bit better and relegation of symptoms, and then it would just sort of peter out and stop working, and then bang, you're back down on the ground, which is brutal.
It is brutal.
Yeah.
It is something I hear so many people dealing with chronic illnesses talk about. It's this weird thing where you try something, it's really awesome for a while, everything is shifting for a while, and then bam, you're back to where you were before.
Yeah. And to me, that is demoralizing. That screws with hope, which when you're that sick, hope is fragile to begin with. But you get that yo-yo thing that just knocks you back down again. And it's like, I can't even care anymore. And yet I can't die. I felt like I was in a body that refused to live and wouldn't die. I was like, there's no way out of this. It was brutal. Yeah. And I have to kind of laugh about it, because if I was to actually tap in to how much that sucked, I would be sobbing right now. And I'm almost starting because it's unreal. I mean, I was this hugely, you see now there's a lot of vitality. It was this hugely vital person. I came home from Russia, for God's sake. I had conquered the world, and I went down and couldn't tell you what day it was for months. Unreal what these illnesses can do to you.
Unreal. And then on top of it, there's the whole invisible illness part of it, which is that you look fine. And you're not the only friend of mine who has gone through this. One of my dearest friends, one of the first people that I started sensing had Lyme disease, people would constantly tell her, it's all in your head. There's nothing wrong with you. Why don't you just suck it up? Why don't you just get over it?
Yeah. One of the low points, and I forget which year this was, it may have been about 2010. My then husband had just kind of hit a breaking point, and he's like, I have to do something. So we went to the Mayo Clinic. We went to the Mayo for a 5-day stay where he worked with, I don't remember how many doctors, but specialists in all these different disciplines, like 5 solid days of tests and all this stuff, $10,000 over the course of those 5 days. And they came up with...
Yeah, I was just going to say that could easily have run you like a big chunk of change right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, we're exhausted, and we are like road tripping to Rochester, Minnesota from Montana. That alone was like debilitating, exhausting.
Yeah.
So anyway, after all of this, they give him the results at the end of the 5-day test setup, and they have 3 recommendations, 3 things for him to do. The first one was to drink more coffee. The second was to exercise. And the third was
I see.
cognitive behavioral therapy.
Oh my God.
I was as pissed as I have ever been in my life. I was so angry that
I can only imagine.
Yeah. That the best that Western medicine has to offer, I don't believe these are incompetent people. But the best that the system has to offer is to drink more goddamn coffee. Are you serious?
And exercise when you're already completely depleted.
Exactly. Like not listening.
And go to a therapist.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That was an extremely painful drive back from Minnesota. I mean, both of us were speechless, exhausted, completely drained. And hope was, oh my God, it was thin at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. I would imagine it would be shattered.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was excruciating. Yeah.
Well, I'm imagining that at least some of the people who are watching this are people who, if they're not suffering from or dealing with Lyme themselves, are people who probably know somebody, and especially any of my viewers who are from this area, because it's fucking epidemic in this area. Mm-hmm. But, you know, and I'm sure that people know the exhaustion and and just the desperation that we often feel.
Yeah.
I mean, if you guys who are here watching this right now know somebody suffering from Lyme disease, or are a Lyme survivor yourself, or if you're suffering right now, please, you know, give us a thumbs up for yes, you know people, and give me a sad face if you are like, I am really struggling with this illness right now, because I mean, Kari and I both are Lyme survivors. I am actually right now fighting anaplasma and Bartonella because I pulled a huge tick off my shoulder, and I've watched it personally. I have an uncle that died from the chronic effects of long-term Lyme disease. It had caused damage to his heart, and after 20 years of trying to deal with it, he died of congestive heart failure. I have another uncle that I'm pretty sure probably had a heart attack as a result of Lyme. I have watched other family members be decimated by it. I've seen it cause the onset of dementia, and it is, and I also believe I've lost 2 dogs to this disease. Wow. So I know how fucking serious it can be and how bad it is. But I also know, because Kari and I are here talking about this, that it is possible to heal from it.
Right.
So, which leads me to my next big question, which is, please tell me about how you started to find your way to healing.
Right. Thank you.
Like, what happened?
Well, like I said, I was like very quote unquote normal before I got sick. I was Western medicine. I was conservative Montana. You know, I was not woo at all before I got sick. And so it took me a lot of years to like break down my belief systems around what causes illness. I mean, we have a very, very strong paradigm for what causes illness and what to do about it. And so it took me a long, long time. And my younger brother's a chiropractor. And so he had a woman working in his office who did applied kinesiology. And he had been saying to me for a long time, you got to check her out. She's doing amazing things. She's helping people. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's crazy shit. I'm not that crazy. Well, I finally got that crazy, right? Tried it.
or that desperate.
Exactly. And that willing to try something new and just give it a whirl. Like, okay, I don't want to be this sick forever. I'm willing to try something. So my ex-husband and I, we both went to see her, and she started doing amazing things with energy. And so she worked on us for a while and started to get like the food intolerance mainly, like starting to shift some things around the food intolerances. And in the experience of working with her, I learned what it felt like when energy moved in my body. She would yawn and I would yawn. I was like, why am I yawning? She's like, that's energy moving. I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. Okay. And it got to be kind of funny, and we would both, whatever. And so started to feel a little bit better. And then she kind of hit a wall. And she was like, okay, Kari, everything else I see in you is emotional, and I don't really do emotional work, but you can feel energy. Here are some resources. You can do this on your own. Like, go. And again, I was terrified, because here's somebody who had actually started to make a difference, and she kind of cut me loose. I was like, shit. Like, but she was right, because in between sessions, I had been trying to like figure it out on my own. Like, what does she do? What does that feel like? How do I make that happen? And so I would like lay in bed at night when I couldn't sleep and like start playing with energy and trying to get energy to move in my body, and things started changing. So after she cut me loose and gave me a couple of resources, I started studying like crazy and found that by working with the emotional energies that felt completely unrelated, I had no idea the link between something that happened when I was 12 and what I was in at the time. Working with like muscle testing in, finding the emotional energy, moving that emotional energy out. And honestly, that's the only thing I did. At that point, I was so frustrated and pissed off at every other system. I was like, fuck it, I'm done. I'm not doing anything else. I stayed on my thyroid medication and my adrenal medication, and I only did energy work. And within 6 weeks, I was able to get off both the thyroid and adrenal medication. And within 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Yeah.
6 weeks.
6 weeks, working on myself nonstop because I was obsessed and wanted to feel better.
But this is 6 weeks after 10 years of suffering.
10 years. 10 years of suffering. 6 weeks, got off both of those medications. And within 6 months, I put a backpack on and hiked 5 miles into the wilderness. Right? For my 40th birthday. My 30s was me being sick. I was sick from 30 to 40.
Wow.
Except for those last 6 months when I was getting better. And, when I first started telling that story about the 6 months part, I didn't believe it myself. I was like, that can't be true. Like, there's no way that was true. It had to have been 18 months. But I looked up my journals. I looked at the dates. No, it was 6 months of energy work, obsessively all day on myself. And I got it back. And I have never gotten that sick again. I've had some like downturns where, it was tough, but I've never gotten anywhere near, like maybe 10% into the illness, but nothing like that ever again.
And it just actually, one of the thoughts that comes to my mind about the downturns is there something that you learned or you've noticed in regards to the downturns? Like, is there anything that tends to be kind of, I don't like the signature thing that tends to provoke the downturns? Like, is there like, if I do X, Y, Z, then I'm much more likely to have a flare up?
If anything, it's allowing myself to worry, to really, really worry and get, that stress that kind of gets into your bones. That level of stress is the sort of thing that will, the way I see it, will lower my bandwidth such that the Borrelia that's still in my body can take over, can flare up a little. The Borrelia is still here. I think the Babesia too, I don't know. But they're still in my body. And when I get low, when I get really tired, really overwhelmed, really, really stressed, the potential is there for those viruses to kind of take over again. Because I see them as really opportunistic,
Yes.
They sit in our systems, and when the system gets worn down by any number of things, maybe it's pneumonia, like we get hit by pneumonia or shingles or something, hits us in a big way, or a major stress life event, those things can flare up.
Yes.
That's kind of the way I see
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and I personally have found that pneumonia and tick-borne illnesses are deeply interconnected. And for me, pneumonia is actually the way that I know that I'm having a flare-up,
Right.
because and that's the other thing about this illness, is that, as they call it, the great pretender, every one of us is going to have it showing up in different parts of our body, manifesting in different ways.
Right.
You know, it is so varied. So there are certain things that we all understand, like the debilitating fatigue and the brain fog and the hopelessness of not knowing if it's possible to fix this. But in other ways, it's like your story and my story can be completely different.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've had kind of a working theory, kind of something I am consistently leaving an open question to, of does the Lyme disease attack the weak link in your system, or does the Lyme disease create the weak link, I guess? It's like there are people, you know, where it lands in the nervous system and it turns into neurological Lyme. For me, it was very much in my digestive system, and it was like I was eating this amazing, healthy, like super clean, fabulous diet, and I was starving to death. We would do like these tests, and I was low on all of the critical minerals, like potassium is like, that's, if I'm getting really fatigued, potassium is kind of my weak place. I need to just make sure I'm getting enough, like bananas and fruit and things that will deliver the right levels of potassium to me. So yeah, it's like it will land in different places, create a whole different subset of symptoms. And so it's so hard to track. It's hard to know what's going on because it's never the same set of symptoms.
Absolutely. And oh God, I mean, even lately I've been experiencing just like hot flashes to beat the band, and I just assumed that it was hormonal. And since I've been aggressively treating the Bartonella and the Anaplasma, but it feels to me like it's the Bartonella, all of a sudden I'm not having hot flashes in the same way.
Wow.
So, you know, it's like the things that we don't even realize are connected to these illnesses suddenly start to change when we start addressing these illnesses.
Right.
So obviously you really started to reclaim your healing, and you basically realized there was a deep emotional connection to your health, which obviously I'm a strong believer in that too.
Right.
And you, in 6 months, you basically went from being bedridden and, you know, as you would put it, a zombie, to being hiking for your 40th birthday. So, and you did a lot of trial and error to figure it out for yourself. So, but there's this interesting transition of, okay, so you healed yourself, but then you decided to become a healer. Right. So talk to me about that. Like, what made you take up the gauntlet and answer the call?
Well, part of it was like sheer excitement. So I started feeling better. And so my husband at the time was sick too. And so he would like come down from his office, and I would see him at the kitchen table, basically just kind of sitting there in tears because he was like too tired to eat, like just exhausted. And so, I mean, I would like put my hands on him and I'm like, I don't know if this will help, but it's the only thing I know what to do. I mean, how do you not try to help in that sort of situation? And so I'd like, okay, this is what I've been doing for myself. What if I tried to do this on you? And I would put my hands on him, and in like 2 minutes, he would come back to life. Like he would spark up and lose that gray tint to his face. And like his eyes, you know, he came back alive. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty fascinating, right? And so I would call friends over, and I would be like, okay, come here, come sit in this chair. I want to put my hands on you and see if this does anything, right? Because I'm like, oh my God. And so they would sit in my chair and they would feel different afterward. And it would be like, holy crap, like this is amazing. I don't even know what I'm doing, but it's really cool because people are feeling better. And then when I fully like got my life back and realized it was something that I could like do with and for other people, I still didn't know the potential of it, but it just felt like the most powerful and amazing, impassioned thing that I'd ever encountered in my life. Like, I've had a million jobs, owned businesses. Nothing was as driving and amazing and deeply, deeply fulfilling to me as putting my hands on people and having things change. And just opening the question up of, I don't know, well, come sit on my chair and we'll see what happens. So it started,
see what happens.
Yeah, it started with that amazing, I don't know if it's possible, but let's see. And experiencing change.
I love that attitude. I don't know if it's possible, but let's see, which I think approaching healing from a place of curiosity in many ways is one of the most powerful ways to heal.
Yes.
While we've been talking, we've actually gotten a couple comments. So I want to throw some of these out there. So Grace, who is a dear friend, has written and said, how can I get these resources? And Kari is going to be talking about those in a little while. And who do you seek for energy work? And I can say Kari and I seek each other.
Right.
And also, Grace was saying, my daughter has been really sick with an unknown autoimmune disease, and it's been 13 years of no answer. And Gracie, having spoken with you, I would not be in the least bit surprised if there is something limey going on in that situation. I mean, I'm not a doctor, nor do I play one on TV, but I've been able to smell these tick-borne illnesses for a long time. And, you know, I mean, the thing is, at this point in time, I will also say, like, let's see, we've got Borrelia, which is Lyme disease. We've got Babesia, Bartonella. We've got Ehrlichia, we've got Rickettsia, we've got Anaplasma, we've got Powassan, we've got Rocky Mountain Spotted Fever.
Epstein-Barr.
Those are Epstein-Barr. You know, Mycoplasma. Mycoplasma. All of these things that are these illnesses, but particularly can be transmitted not only by ticks,
right,
but also at this point, they're starting to suspect that some things can be transmitted by mosquitoes and that mice are a nasty vector for these things. But the other thing is, and this is more controversial, but I'm just going to put it out there, is that there are some people who are saying that Lyme disease can be transmitted sexually, right, that it can be a sexually transmitted disease, and that also there are stories of Lyme disease or other tick-borne illnesses being transmitted transplacentally.
Right.
So, you know, I mean, it's just a wild thing. Right. And a lot of times the doctors don't know.
Right.
Now, our Melissa said she can't love this enough. And you are so amazing with a big heart.
Love her.
And then Amy Fletcher said, have either of you found or heard of anyone claim that doctors are trying to cover up the Lyme diagnosis by claiming the tests don't show it and refuse or don't offer a more thorough, accurate testing? I've heard they do it because of insurance companies. So Amy, what I would personally say, I'll answer this and then you can answer this. Does that sound good? Yeah. So Amy, what I would personally say is that Lyme disease has been a fairly controversial thing. And obviously there are allopathic doctors who, for whatever reason, have been taught to believe that there's no such thing as chronic Lyme. The way that the insurance companies are working right now, there is a lot of resistance to doing the expensive tests. And part of it is that there is absolutely no CDC standard right now for the Western, you know, for what goes into a Lyme test. So there's a lab, I think at this point there's more than one lab, but for years there was one lab in the country, IGeneX, that did the Western blot that tested for all of the different what are they? Bars.
Pathogens, right?
And pathogens that go, but the bars, like the immune, the IgG bars that go into whether somebody is carrying it. And if a doctor is not Lyme literate, if a doctor is not informed, because this is a fairly new illness, like it's only been in the last 25 years that this illness has been exploding on the East Coast. There are a lot of doctors who, I'm going to be kind and say, it's that they don't know any better, that they are not informed. And when they go to the conventional medical organizations, they're being told that this is some quack thing, and that basically this stuff is just a totally, we're all making it up. I think that Lyme is at a crisis point, and in some ways I actually believe, similarly to what I believe Kari believes, is that Lyme disease is something that is forcing us to take our healing into our own hands, and forcing us to take responsibility for our bodies, for our choices, for our diets, and for how we heal ourselves. And that, you know, I would say there are good doctors who are really Lyme literate, who really know their shit. And then there are doctors who are misinformed. And I don't think that, you know, I don't want to get into where it's come from and why it is the way it is. But from my understanding, it started in Lyme, Connecticut, because it is just like, I'm not sure how many miles away from a research lab that was testing and experimenting with various pathogens at the time that the disease sort of expanded. So there's, you know, it's not my place to talk about the controversy, but if you Google it, you can certainly find a lot of really interesting information. And I first read about where it actually came from in, I think it was like the Atlantic Monthly. So we're not talking about like a woo or weird, way out wacky, like tinfoil on your head magazine. We're talking about a legit source basically saying, yeah, this originated from a lab, or at least this variation of Borrelia. So Amy, I hope that gave you an answer. You want to give me a thumbs up and let me know if that gave you at least some sense of it? And Kari, do you feel like jumping in on my, like, jumping up on the soapbox for this?
I agree with you in that I don't find it effective to blame the doctors and kind of go that route. To me, it's a lot more effective to just start working on ourselves, like to just start diving into how do I heal myself, and how do I take responsibility for what has happened in my life, and take that side of it. Like I said, I had basically given up on the diagnosis or the whatever, like before I got mine. So I don't think it's useful to introduce more negativity into the system, honestly.
Well said. Yeah. And I mean, I just really do also believe that much of it is misinformation. And, you know, is that doctors are so inundated right now with like HMOs and insurance companies telling them what to do. And also so many different kinds of illnesses that are manifesting in this day and age, that I think that they are just absolutely overwhelmed. And the idea of taking the time that both you and I have to learn about Lyme disease, they don't even have the time to do it.
Yeah. One of my favorite voices in this alternative healing world is Lissa Rankin. She's an MD who got chronic fatigue, and she basically walked away from the Western model and did the emotional work to heal herself of her own chronic fatigue issues. And rather than turning her back on the Western model that the whole Western medicine setup, which really drives doctors into the ground, it's really unfriendly to doctors as well as to the patients. She has turned toward it and said that her mission is to heal medicine, to heal the Western medicine model. And to me, that is so amazing, because I don't know if I could do that, knowing that the Western medicine model is what sent her into the chronic fatigue that really, really cost her a lot of, like, herself. To be able to turn back toward it with a compassionate eye and say, I want to fix a system that is breaking people who, you know, they go into medicine wanting to help, and you know, they put a lot of effort and commitment and financial money into it, and the system has turned to where even the doctors are getting ground to powder. And so I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. I believe they went into it for good reasons.
Absolutely. Britt asked a question. She just asked, is Epstein-Barr tick-borne? Question.
That's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
It's
but
one of those,
and I think you listed it as, it is one of those weird invisible diseases.
Exactly.
For sure.
It can show up with so many different symptom sets. For a long time, they were looking at Epstein-Barr for us. Like, this looks like it could be Epstein, that kind of thing. So it's another one of those pathogens that can look like a lot of other potential problems.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally.
Easily misdiagnosed.
Yeah. Yeah. And Grace was asking, what kind of doctor do you look for? And in some ways, I think it really depends on where you're at in the stage, because in some ways, both of us are saying it's not necessarily about the doctor. Right. It's about really learning how to take responsibility for our own healing. Yeah. I mean, I guess I would say that when I'm looking for a doctor, one of the first things you want to find out is this person Lyme literate? Right. And what do they believe about Lyme disease and chronic illness? And where do they fall even on things like antibiotics? And, what kinds of suggestions are they going to be making? And what kind of track record do they have? And if you Google Lyme literate doctor in your area, look at the reviews, look at the responses, look at what other people are saying about these doctors. I will also say, though, that sometimes you will find with certain Lyme literate doctors that there will be information in certain places where people will be saying that these doctors are quacks. Right. And I don't really know. I find that interesting just because there is so much controversy. And I've known of certain doctors where they have performed, they've helped many, many, many people. And yet there are other people who would say that they are always inclined to diagnose for Lyme, no matter what. Mm. Now, that's not been my personal experience. Getting a Lyme diagnosis was not just like, oh, this is what you've got.
Oh, hell no.
My experience with doctors, even the Lyme literate doctors, is that they are not quick to just say, you've got Lyme disease and put you on antibiotics. Right. But yeah, I mean, do you have any other suggestions about looking for a Lyme literate doctor?
No, I mean, that's just exactly what I was going to say. There are resources now available to find Lyme literate docs, whereas, 10 years ago, I hadn't even heard of the phrase yet.
Right, right. Yeah, I think Lyme literate doc was just beginning to come into the vocabulary about 10 years ago, and really, fortunately, I mean, it's amazing. In the time, so I have my DO who is a Lyme survivor, my former DO who used to be in Maine is a Lyme survivor and who's practicing now in a completely different state, left Maine. But when she first started treating for Lyme in this area, people could not call her and say, I think I have Lyme disease. Because if she said, come in and I can help you, she could have just gotten completely knocked out. She could have lost her license to practice. And, so there was this game that people had to play 8-10 years ago where they would have to basically be like, hi, I'm really tired and my body is aching and I'm in pain through my entire joint and I can't think straight. Can you please come see me? And it was only after somebody was in somebody's care could they start to even talk about the fact that it was likely that it was Lyme disease that was causing the problem. Fortunately, here, at least in New Hampshire, in New England, laws have really changed and doctors are able to diagnose chronic Lyme and able to treat chronic Lyme, and people are not losing their licenses anymore. Amazing. So it's really progressed and people are talking about it in a way that they weren't talking about it even 2 years ago, which is exciting. Yeah. Now, Amy made a comment that the antibiotics that they prescribed felt like, felt like a slow, extremely aggressive death. Oh. Yeah, doesn't that sound awful? And Melissa, our Melissa, said, my mom got help with her Lyme from a holistic dentist that she was referred to him by a thermography specialist. Wow. Awesome. And hi, Melissa, other Melissa, my dear Melissa.
Your Melissa.
So good to see you too. Yes. Oh, Kate, you're so very welcome. What suggestions do you have for the follow-up care for her 2 children who had Lyme last summer? They went through the treatment, but the oldest still seems, I'm assuming this comment has more to it. I can only see these still seems, but I'm assuming like your oldest is still suffering.
Right.
And that is, I just want to say, that's another thing I will say about conventional Lyme treatment is that even when people are treating for Lyme disease, there are a lot of conventional doctors who will acknowledge an acute infection, put somebody on antibiotics, but not treat it adequately. And in the case of my mom, that's what happened. She had Babesia and Borrelia. She ended up hospitalized with the Babesia and on IV antibiotics, but she was on them for about 2 weeks. And then they put her on oral antibiotics for like 1 month. Mm-hmm. And she was fine for a little while, but then basically after a couple months, the infection took back over and we've never been able to get it to go away ever since.
Wow. That's terrifying. So I would actually love to hear your perspective on this, because dealing with it right now and working both sides, because right now you are working with antibiotics as well as everything else you're doing.
Right.
And so the antibiotics can help, obviously. You know this.
Absolutely.
And you know to do more than that. So yeah, I would love your perspective on that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, switching the chair
Right.
here for a second. I personally believe that antibiotics are incredibly effective when it's in an acute infection. And that because I basically pulled an engorged, or David pulled an engorged tick off my shoulder the other day, which you saw the picture.
That's disgusting.
It was pretty disgusting. And it had apparently, according to the lab, it had been feeding for at least 99 hours. Yeah. So from my perspective, there are times when antibiotics make sense. And at the point of an acute infection, antibiotics really do make sense. What I will say from my own personal experience, and I believe strongly that every single human body varies, and what works for me, may work for you, but I can only share, I am not a medical doctor, nor is Kari a medical doctor, and the information that we are sharing is entirely from our personal experience. Take what you like, leave the rest, but also check with your doctor, check with your healthcare practitioners. This video is entirely informational and is not designed to diagnose or treat anything. So that said, with that disclaimer, what I will say is, in my personal experience, the last time I came down with this stuff, I didn't know I didn't know that it was Lyme disease. I thought it was just pneumonia. So I went on a Z-Pak and I took basically I took 2 rounds of Z-Pak. So I took 10 days of azithromycin, and I was feeling better, but I was still drooping, and I was basically sick for 2 months. And it wasn't until about, like, I got sick in October, I got Spirit basically kept saying, go get Lyme tested, go get Lyme tested. And it wasn't until March that I got the positive diagnosis. By that point, I personally knew it was too late for antibiotics. Like, there was just no point. Right. So what I personally did was I really cleaned up my diet. Like, I eliminated carbohydrates almost entirely. I was doing an extremely clean whole food diet. And I started doing I started doing a lot of parasite cleansing, as well as personally working with essential oils for really helping my body to heal, and using a lot of tapping, a lot of energy work, a lot of EFT. And also, I personally was guided to use this thing called a Rife machine, right, which does frequency medicine. And I really do believe that Rifing saved my ass. Mm-hmm. And right now, what I am doing again is I'm on antibiotics. I'm going to stay on them for a while because 2 co-infections, I'm not going to mess with them. My diet, I'm like, okay, if I eat too much carbohydrate, it's going to feed the gut bugs and my gut could go out of balance because I'm on so many antibiotics. So I have to be careful with my diet. I'm using a lot of a lot of essential oils. I'm working with a lot of herbal remedies, and I'm working with a lot of energy healers, a lot like acupuncture, craniosacral with my DO, doing energy healing work with a number of different people, colleagues that I love to work with, as well as Rifing as frequently as I can do it right now, which is like sometimes as much as like every night for a few days and then taking a break. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I believe that antibiotics alone don't cut it.
Right.
And that if you just want the antibiotics, and especially a short round of antibiotics, you know, they've done tests where they've looked at like Petri dishes, and it's like, you know, the period of time when most people are on antibiotics is just not long enough. And then they will show how the Borrelia has come back. But the other part of it is that, you know, these diseases are sort of in this weird variation, my understanding, between sort of bacteria and viral. Mm-hmm. You know, and they also are known for hiding in our biofilm and going dormant into our bodies. So a lot of times, once it starts to be attacked by antibiotics, it burrows into our system. I mean, if you look at Borrelia, it's a spirochete. It's like literally
a corkscrew.
Looks like a screwdriver, a corkscrew. Mm-hmm. You know, and that corkscrew can go into our tissue. It can go into places where the antibiotics can't access it. Right. So I really believe that alternative ways of working with it is necessary.
Yeah.
So that was obviously a very complicated and fairly long answer.
Right.
So Kate, I hope you found it helpful. I know Kari also has some resources for really helping people to learn how to take this into their own hands. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's where it has led me. It's so complicated. When we start to look at all the things, all the systems that start to break down, all of the stuff that happens with these chronic, they create this massive inflammation response in the body. Like all of your systems start to get impacted. And so you've got symptoms all over the place. And when you start to try to attack them like symptom at a time, it's like that horrible game, the symptom whack-a-mole, where you whack it and then something else pops up somewhere else. So I never did the antibiotic route because it had been so many years.
Well, but you had been doing the antibiotic route. I mean, you had said that they kept
early on. Yeah. Way early on, like in 04, 05. Yeah. I went on a couple of rounds of Z-Pak and another one, and, you know, felt better while I was on it. And then, you know, felt crappy immediately afterward. Yeah. Yeah. So, right. I did that a long time earlier. But never nobody ever said this is for the Lyme. But anyway, so I basically kind of backed up to the 30,000 foot view and said, what is causing all this stuff? Like, why did I get beat down enough that these things could take over? What has happened that I cannot heal anymore? And like start at that 30,000 foot view of, okay, a human body heals itself all the time. Like we build a new liver every 3 years, 90 days. I don't know, whatever it is, the stats. We're constantly regenerating cells. Why is my stomach lining not regenerating itself? Like I should be healing. Why is my body not healing itself here? And so backing all the way back to that and looking at, okay, maybe there's energy I can get a hold of and work with. And so when I'm working with clients, we do start with the symptoms. We start with the things that hurt the most. And we use that as basically the signposts into where's the energy that we can actually work with in order to help the whole thing start to get stronger to where the body can heal itself again. Because for me, if we try to work with one symptom at a time, we can spend decades, and they're like mushrooms. They pop up where we're not looking. So I don't know if that helped at all.
I'm imagining it did. I found it very helpful.
It certainly did me. I mean, when I shifted that mindset of, okay, I no longer care anymore about getting enough glutathione, getting enough ozone, like getting enough potassium. I don't care about that anymore. I want to look for the reason I need glutathione right now.
And in my experience, when it comes to autoimmune diseases, which interestingly, many people who are Lyme survivors develop autoimmune diseases. It's one of the ways that that tick-borne illnesses affect a lot of us. And interestingly, in my experience, as I've healed from Lyme, my autoimmune issues have really decreased. But with autoimmunity, one of the really big things is this idea of autoimmune, like whether, and your thyroid too, you know, this thing of like, okay, you can address the thyroid, or you can look at the fact that the problem is that our body is out of balance and that our body is reacting in a way that it's basically constantly going on red alert.
Right.
And it's that looking at the larger level of why is my body reacting
Right.
in all of these different ways, instead of looking at the symptoms as the problem, seeing the symptoms as indicative of something much bigger.
Right.
Is that?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the only way I could retain any kind of sanity in this, because it can just drive you mad. There's no end in sight.
Well, in EFT, there's this term called chasing the pain that often, you know, while working on physical sensations in the body, the pain will actually move around in the body. And in a way, this is kind of like, is literally sort of an extension of chasing the pain, that when we start focusing on the pain, it has this funny way of, like, I think of it as like air bubbles underneath contact paper. Right. You start trying to push it down and it just moves over to another location. Right. Because it's not addressing the air underneath the surface, or the thing that's causing. And
the super exciting thing about energy healing is when we get to the energy underneath, and when I'm looking at a body, I've got somebody on my table and I'm working on them, I see the energy as like this little ball, this little sphere, like stuck in somebody's shoulder or whatever. When we get a hold of that energy that is sort of tied to the symptom, that is sort of creating the symptom, the energy changes fast. Like, the energy changes so quickly. It's amazing. And sometimes the whole symptom can go away like in a single session. Lyme disease does not go away in a single session, but the energy underneath it, we get at those pieces and they change really, really simply, really quickly. And I mean, I totally dig that. I think it's awesome.
Yeah. And I will also say that I have seen amazing, like, it doesn't necessarily go away in one sitting. I mean, this is a process.
Totally.
And it is definitely not a one session wonder. Or one and done. But I have also seen incremental shifts that happen where it's like, it is that thing of like, you know, you're working for 6 months and then all of a sudden, bam, suddenly everything shifts.
Right.
And in my experience, I have these levels of the veils being lifted off of me, where all of a sudden I've been working at it and working at it and working at it. And then one day it's not a problem anymore.
Right. Right. Yeah. During that 6-month period, there was a time, so I started in February, and in June, we went to Italy with my ex-husband's family.
Yeah, you posted a picture on your Facebook wall about a week ago about that specifically.
Yeah. And at that time, I was still exhausted. I was still tired easily all the time. I could go for a couple of days and then I would be laid out flat for 3 or 4 days. So I was still not in any kind of good shape. But that was early June. By late July, it had completely changed. So it felt like it changed all of a sudden really fast at the end of that 6 months. And, you know, maybe you get that tipping point. I like to think of it as our baseline stress level is at like whatever point. And when we get that high enough to where we can't keep our head above water, then we're constantly getting sick and there's a problem. And so the energy healing just pulls that baseline stress lower and lower and lower to where our body can heal itself.
Absolutely. Totally. Yeah. So, you had mentioned wanting to share an exercise.
Yeah.
Have you got some time to do that with us?
Right. Yes. So a lot of what we've kind of talked about a little bit here is that the antibiotics are an approach, but they're not the whole thing. And what I've found with energy work is if we can turn toward the problem, turn toward the pain without a sledgehammer, without like saying, get out of my life, I don't want you around anymore. Mm. If we can turn toward that pain with awareness, with witness, with attention, it changes. And so it's really counterintuitive because we spend most of our life trying to get rid of pain. Like that's basically what, I don't know, being human is all about. I don't know.
Unless you're a tattooer, then
right?
you're inflicting on a regular basis.
Hilarious.
But
yeah.
Anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
So turning toward the pain that hurts, turning toward the thing that sucks without, like I said, without the sledgehammer of wanting it to go away and trying to force it to move and do something different, allows it to breathe, to exist. If it has any information for you, to like tell you. I mean, we're pretty far out here in the woo, but this is where we live.
We live in it.
Right?
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure most of the viewers who are here live
totally.
in it too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've sort of warned them about this in advance. They kind of know what they're getting themselves into.
This is your page, indeed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So turning toward it and asking, like, what is happening here? What do I need? And sometimes not even asking. Like the first step is to take a deep breath and look at the thing that sucks. The thing that is like devastating you. And like for me, it's, you know, it was my belly. It was always my belly. And so taking a breath and like taking off your armor and turning toward this thing that has hurt you so much for so long and just holding space for it, witnessing it and allowing it to exist. Mm-hmm. To me, that is step one, because then we start to become friends with our body. A client I was working with the other day put this so clearly. I'd walked her through this exercise and she was like, oh my God, it's like I'm making friends with my body again. And if you have been sick for 10 years, your body is not your friend, right? Like you're over it. You want this goddamn body to get over its shit and start working again. That is not a position from which to heal.
No, it is not a position from which to heal.
We can't.
You know,
we can't beat Lyme into submission. I really don't think we can.
No, we can't beat Lyme into submission.
Yeah, and it's a major mindset shift. It takes a lot to be able to turn toward the thing that hurts you the most, and not like try to hurt it back and hold like compassionate space for it. And so it's really nice to have somebody else do that for you, you know, working
Absolutely.
with somebody who can guide you into that and say, okay, so tell me, I'm seeing this thing in your belly and, you know, what do you see? I love to work with emotional energy, and emotional trauma also sucks. It's called trauma. And that's the kind of stuff that gets stuck in us and ultimately creates illness. So another way that I love working with the energy of the thing, so we've got this thing in your belly that hurts. If you can turn toward it and try to see it in your mind's eye, like what color is it? How big is it? What shape is it? Does it have edges? Are the edges wet? Are they grainy? You're starting to you're working with this energy of the thing in your belly, but you're taking it out of the regular context of pain, and you're taking it out of the context of emotion and looking at it through like out of the limbic brain and into the frontal brain or the visual. So you're looking at the same piece of energy through a different processing channel, and it doesn't have to suck nearly as much to work with it and hold space for it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Good.
Yeah. And like we were talking earlier, that curiosity is such a powerful way to approach healing. Yeah. And that when we can come to it from a place of mindful curiosity and witness, as opposed to this engaging in this emotional attachment, mm-hmm. it can make such an incredible difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's something you have to probably try before you're going to trust. Maybe there are people out here who are willing and open, like I was that day that I finally went to see the applied kinesiologist, and you're ready to try something new. If so, try something like this. Try turning toward the thing that sucks the most and just being curious about it. And what does the energy feel like? What are the outside edges of this thing? Get curious about it, because what happens when we start looking at and engaging with our subtle energy body with curiosity instead of a hammer, it changes. If we use a hammer on it, it will stay the same. It will fight back. It needs to be witnessed. It needs to be seen. We need to be kind to it. So I promise you, I mean, there are not very many promises in this work, but I promise you, if you hold your awareness on it with kindness and compassion and openness and curiosity, something will change. That's energy healing. That's craniosacral work. That's energy healing. It will change if you give it space to breathe.
I would like to just add that it will change, but it may change in a way that you want it. It may change how you hope it will.
Right.
And it may change in a completely different way. And that in my experience as part of this healing process too, is the ability to allow the body to do what it needs to do.
Right.
And to allow the process to be what it is without having a lot of agenda and expectation of what healing is going to look like.
Right.
And, you know, and that for me is the distinction between healing and a cure.
Yeah.
I'm also struck by, as you're talking about, you know, the place where when we're first learning how to be mindful with our body, where we're first learning how to have that kind of compassionate dialogue with ourselves. And you said something that I think is so incredibly important, which is that it can really help to have somebody who's been there and who knows how to do this to teach you. Because I certainly know from my own personal experience and also from working with clients and watching the process, mindfulness takes time. We live in a culture, in my experience, where we're taught to tell stories and we're taught how to be up in our head. And knowing how to really be present with the purity of a single feeling, I think actually takes it takes a certain amount of learning how to do it. So you've touched on this, but I think I just want to say that working with a skilled practitioner like Kari or like me, I think can really make a huge difference, especially when you're learning how to have a dialogue with your own healing and your own body.
Absolutely. And I will add, you're going to learn it so much faster than I did. It's amazing.
No
it blows
kidding.
my mind. I've got a client, first time I'm teaching them something that took me weeks and weeks and months to like figure out, how do I ask this question right? How do I get I like lay it out, and in 20 minutes, they get the results that I spent months on. Like, boom, you are going to learn it so much faster if you've got somebody guiding you through it. If you have to piece this together on your own, don't try to piece it together on your own.
Don't.
Get a guide.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, some of my stuff was all around sort of my family perfectionism and like the idea of, you know, I'm supposed to figure out this stuff on my own. And if I was willing to ask for help a lot earlier, I certainly could have gotten further a lot faster. So I totally know what you're saying. That it's so much more efficient to get help when you need it.
Use the years I put in, like use the effort that I have put in to figure this stuff out so that you don't have to go through it that long. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, it's like, don't do what Kari, you know, don't be like Kari.
Don't do what I did.
No, don't suffer for 10 years with this stupid illness because you think you can, you know, well, for one thing, because you're running into just people who don't know anything. But when you do find sources where there's hope, a glimmer of hope, let yourself receive that support. So so do you have anything else is there anything that we haven't covered that you feel like you must share? And also, I know what I want to ask you to tell me.
Okay.
If you could talk to yourself, when you hit, like, let's say the moment that you came back from that writing retreat.
Right.
And you started to, and maybe a week after you came back from the writing retreat and you had fallen into the zombie years, what would you tell that person now? What would you say to her?
What would I say to her? God. I would say listen to your gut. My gut was telling me all along what it was that put me in the position I was in. I knew there was a truth I wouldn't listen to. And that's the reason I stayed sick as long as I did. But the truth was not what I thought it was. So I knew there was something I wouldn't look at. I knew there was like a thing that I refused to hear myself saying because I thought it meant one thing. When I finally did listen to my gut, when I finally listened, it said something totally different. And I was like, oh, well, shit, I'll do that. Hell yeah. Listen to your gut. Trust yourself. Yeah. You know more than you think you do. And you deserve to get out of this quicker. Like, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I'd never thought about that, but.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, Kari, obviously, you love this work.
Right. Love this work.
And you're kind of a walking miracle. So please tell us how people can work, like tell us what you can do for, tell us how we can work with you. Tell us what you can offer. Tell us how to get in touch with you.
Cool. Thank you. I mean, that's an amazing ask for you, to opportunity for you to give me. I am really excited. I am launching a new community I'm launching it on Monday, and it's a community online where all of my resources are available. All of the digital work, the stuff I give my private clients is all available online in this community. And I am there daily, and I'm giving new content twice a week, and I'm giving Q&A sessions once a week. This is an incredible opportunity to, at a really low entry point, jump in to getting the next best thing to private work. Private work is a significant commitment, but this online community is an amazing place to dip your toe in the waters of this work, to start trying to do it yourself and get really good guidance and coaching on why is it not working, and ask your questions. And so that program is one that I'm really, really excited about, and I think it's going to be an amazing place to have the impact that I really want to make in the world. I want to be the person for everyone who is suffering for this to come to and to find a solution and a way out of the nightmare. And this community, I believe, is going to be a really big piece of how I'm able to do that. And I just want to offer this because there are too many people suffering. And so if you're interested, if you're interested, make a comment here in this form, and I will get you the information and how to get in at a really low entrance point as soon as the launch is ready.
Do you, by any chance, have a website or a place where people can sign up for your mailing list in the meantime, too?
Yes.
Especially in case of when people see this video, like later on.
Sure.
Where can we send people right now?
Right. So KariMitchellHealing.com is my website. And on that page, you can sign up for the my self-healing starter kit, which is the most important tool that I have ever discovered in this work. And there's a little video on how to use the tool and pitfalls and why it's not working and that kind of thing. That's a great place to start. And then that puts you on my mailing list, and then you will get all of the announcements about the program when it launches. Thank you. So KariMitchellHealing.com.
And if somebody were to decide they wanted to get some private opportunity with you, is that something you're available for at this point?
It is. I don't take a ton of private clients, but I do have availability. Yeah. And so, leave a comment. We will have a conversation and see if it's right for you.
Fantastic. Okay. And also your Facebook page is Healing Invisible Illness?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. So if people want to follow your page, they should go and like it.
Right. Thank you.
And, follow that and connect with that. So KariMitchellHealing.com, go sign up for her mailing list, go check out her self-healing, what do we call it? Self-healing package or self-healing training?
What do we call it? We're calling it self-healing revolution.
Self-healing revolution.
We have to change things.
That is very serious.
I know it.
We do have to change things.
We have to change things.
It's incredibly important.
Yeah.
We do have to change.
Yeah, it's time.
Yeah.
And we need a revolution.
It is totally time. Yes.
Yeah.
We totally need a revolution. It's time for things to change, and we need to take our healing back into our own hands.
We do. We do. Yeah. Because this is an epidemic and it is not going away.
No, it is not going away.
Not on its own.
And whether it's an autoimmune disease, whether it is, a tick-borne illness, whether it is cancer, whether it's diabetes, whatever it is, right now, so many people are struggling and suffering because the system is not working, and our bodies are saying, this is not cutting it anymore.
Right.
This is not working anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And we can do it ourselves. I mean, self-healing.
We can.
We can change it. We can change our lives.
And I will say for myself, if there's any gift that I have gotten from Borrelia, Anaplasma, and Bartonella, it is really the fact that especially when I learned that I had Borrelia, I was like, fuck no, I am not going to let this take me out. Right. And I really decided to take responsibility for my healing in a way that I had never taken it before.
Totally.
Like I really was like, I'm in charge, and I am not going to go down. I'm not going to let this soldier go down on my watch.
Right.
And that feels so powerful to say, I choose to take care of myself about this.
Right. That was my low point too. My low point where I was like, I think I'm dying. And I declared, I will not die this way. Like, I did not come to this earth to die this way. No. Yeah. When that hell no took over, I was like, okay, I will do anything, but I will not die this way. And taking that responsibility back and taking the power back at the same time.
Yeah.
When you asked what would I have told myself in 2008? In a lot of ways, I got a huge gift out of those years of illness. I have turned them into a huge gift. I don't know. My life is so different as a result of taking my healing back, and the whole mindset and responsibility shift of I can do anything. I wouldn't give that up, even though maybe I didn't need to suffer for 10 years for it. I don't know. But
yeah, it's so hard to say. Like, did you need every single minute of that 10 years to be where you are today?
I don't think that has to be true. No, but who knows?
Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jen.
Oh, you were so welcome, Kari. This was amazing. Absolutely amazing. And oh God, I mean, this is something I feel so passionate about as well. And I'm so grateful to be able to hear your story at greater length and just, and I am truly grateful that you are not in your zombie years anymore, and that you have found a way, and that you've answered the call, and you're willing to take on something fairly big.
I know, right?
In terms of really helping people.
Yeah, I know that mission scares me sometimes, a lot of the time, but we have to, damn it. And I have my piece that I can contribute, and I'm going to do it.
We have to. And it's right now. Grace just said thank you for sharing, and she's also interested in hearing more.
Awesome. Lovely.
So let's just reiterate where people can find you. Right. So KariMitchellHealing.com, go sign up for her mailing list, check out the Self-Healing Revolution, and check out her page, which is Healing Invisible Illness. And anything else you want to say before we sign off?
You can heal. That's what I want to say. Yeah. You can heal. You can heal. Keep looking.
Yeah.
Keep looking.
Yeah. Oh, Susan Bateman just said self-healing revolution. Love that. You're amazing. Thank you, Jen, for this great discussion.
Yay.
Susan, so good to see you here, and you're so welcome. And Amy just said, your story gives hope to so many. Your journey gives us courage, and your knowledge gives us strength. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Means so
I
much.
just want to say one thing, just hold up your piece about loving the parts that we're having a hard time with. And I just want to pull that back out and just say, Kari, that is gold.
Thank you.
I mean, just that let's stop beating, stop hitting ourselves or stop hitting the disease with a hammer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So powerful.
Yeah.
So powerful.
It changes everything.
Yeah.
It does.
Okay, guys. So
Right.
Run. Do not walk. Run. KariMitchellHealing.com. Check out her amazing website. Check out her amazing material. And if you feel called to, reach out and let Kari know that you'd be interested in working with her. She's an amazing healer.
Thank you, Jen.
So you're so welcome. And I'm so glad that I was able to wrangle you and get you here. I've only been trying to get her to do this for a while.
We have been.
So consider, I've been like, come on, when are we going to tell your story?
I know, right?
It needs to be heard. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
So.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you
and thank
so
you
much.
everyone who showed up and was here and asked questions. It's awesome to have an audience to talk to. Thank you.
Exactly. Yay.
All right.
So until we meet again, peace.
Peace.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, I'm trying to finish this. Oh, and by the way, the word of the day is Lyme disease.